Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Our class today is dedicated to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And today's Gita Mahatmya, Samsara Sagaram Goram Tatram Ichati Yo Naraha Gita Navam Samasadhya Param Yati Sukhena Saha. A person who wants to cross over the ghastly ocean of material suffering can do so very easily by taking shelter of the boat of Bhagavad Gita. Right? This is a very apt verse because we are talking about the various things that a human life goes through because of the three modes. And while we talk about these three modes, one thing that strikes out very prominently is that most people don't realize that this material nature is ghastly, right? Because they think whatever situations they are in this material world, somehow they are managing, somehow they are managed to earn a living, somehow there's food coming on the plate, there's somehow nice family around me. So what's so ghastly about this material nature as such? But what we forget about this material nature is that nobody who's born in the material nature is born here out of their own will. They are born because they are circumstantially forced to be born with a certain body. And when you're forced to be born with a certain body, it also means that you're not, in control of what kind of conditions you're born with. Are you born in a rich family? Are you born in a not so, poor family, educated, uneducated, what kind of physical, issues you have, what kind of health issues you have. Nobody can control it. So why then do we always assume that this material nature is bearable? Srila Prabhupada says, even a pig, right, a swine, if it lives long enough in, say, dirty places, dirt, sewage, after some time you'll see the pig enjoying the sewage. They'll say, this is the best thing that has happened to me. They'll be enjoying it. But a little more elevated person, when they look at this person who is a little more aware of better living conditions, they look at this pig and say, what ghastly conditions the pig is living in, right? Similarly, devatas who are looking at us suffering through our day-to-day, everything that's going on in our life, trying to, deal with our anxieties, trying to deal with, our health issues, all the stress that we go through. Even when we are happy, we're not really happy because we're thinking that something bad will happen in future. So we are not really happy in this sense. So even devatas who look at us living like this and somehow trying to be happy in this condition, they might be thinking, what ghastly conditions these human beings are living in. Same for devatas in heavenly planet. Some other in the higher planet might be thinking, instead of spending time reading, learning about the Lord, these people are enjoying there in the heaven. What a ghastly condition to live in, right? So for something or the other, we need to understand that this material nature is not meant for our enjoyment. I'll not name this person, but I saw a question in a survey which said, so if I live in Rajoguna, will I continue getting human life? I'll not fall into animal life, right? This, so I understand why this question was put. What was the intent of the question? This person is thinking that if I'm born as a human, at least I'll have a chance for salvation. I can liberate. But as an animal, then that option is not there. Right, that's a mood the question was put. But what we forget is when we are in Rajoguna constantly, that means constant struggle, constant fruitive activities, constant struggling to meet our desires, right? So which also means our desire to serve the Lord is reducing. And when we are constantly in one kind of condition, right, we are stagnated in one kind of condition, that means to say, if you're not trying to elevate from that condition, then we start to deteriorate, which means to say eventually from Rajaguna we'll slip down to Tamasa. tamasaguna, right? So we should remember that it's always better to go look for a higher goal than to say this is the worst of best of the worst situation, so I'll be a human. Even human is not meant for a permanent situation. Like I was saying, it's more like a jail for us, where a jail is a place where you suffer the consequence of your previous life, right? So this should not be our ultimate uh, goal in life, to say let me just be a human, that is enough for me. From human you should try to be something better, maybe devatas, work with sattva guna. From there, once you get to a perfect stage of sattva, then maybe we elevate further from there, right? So that's the only hope. So to assume that this material world somehow will manipulate the situations around here, because I'm born as a human, somehow I'll manipulate the situation to be happy here, and after death I'll also be happy afterwards, that is not a working true situation. So somehow if you try to be happy in the material world, it's understood that after death, we'll have a lesser favorable place to go to, right? So that's how we want to learn about this. So as a human, as a person who wants to live a cultured life, we will have restrictions. We will have to go through some kind of austerities, some kind of penances. We do all that so that though the life does not seem great right now, doing all this fasting, trying to go to temples, so many things happening around us, but still it's a assurance, it's an insurance for us that our next birth will be better than what we are doing now. Okay, so ultimately we should, what this verse is telling is that one should try to follow what is written in the Bhagavad Gita and build your human culture such that, because Gita is preaching the best of human, how a best of human class should live, right? So we should try to aim to be that best of human class, and by reading and following the instructions of Gita, we will definitely cross the ghastly ocean of material suffering. Okay, Jay. Let's go to chapter 15. The chapter 15 is called as Yoga of the Supreme Person, or Purushottama Yoga. So in chapter 14, we discussed three modes of material nature, okay? And how each mode is binding. Like in the mode of goodness, knowledge and happiness is binding. In the mode of um, passion, it's fruitive work, right? And in the mode of ignorance, it is ignorance, or too much attachment to things like that. Just all something or the other, each of the mode, because it's karmic, all the activities are karmic, and there's some attachment involved in these kind of work. There is some kind of binding involved. Now, in this Purushottama Yoga in chapter 15, there's a connection to chapter 9. In chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge, Krishna is saying the most confidential knowledge is that he's maintaining everything. He's saying not the more confidential knowledge. He's saying that he's maintaining all the universes with, as part of his Anu, his Paramatma is within everyone, and he is maintaining everything through that Paramatma, right? So he's made that statement. Now, this Purushottama Yoga is telling how he's maintaining the universe as the Paramatma. Okay, so it's talking in a little more depth into that aspect, how he's managing the universes, the material worlds as Paramatma. So this word Purushottama means supreme person. So this is the this chapter talks how to connect with the supreme person, how to understand he's managing everything with his energies. Okay, so that's what this chapter is talking about. Does anyone want to read the verse 1?
May I, Mataji?
Yes, please go ahead.
Shri Bhagavan Urdhvamulam Madashakham Ashwatham Prahuravyayam Chandansi Yasya Paranani Yastam Veda Savedavit. The translation by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upwards and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas.
Jai. So if you have gone to a bank of a river, right? Say, let's assume the water is stagnant, it's not moving, and there's a big banyan tree on the bank of the river, right? So what happened when you see from the other side, you can see the tree on top, and on the water, you see a reflection of this tree, correct? Just like the picture that you see on the screen bottom, there's a reflection. So there's an inverted reflection. So Krishna is saying this material world that we are living in, starting from Brahma Loka all the way down to Patala Loka, this whole 14 planets that we see is a reflection, is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, right? Why perverted? We'll explain in a bit. Okay, it's an imitation of the real thing. Okay, it's not the real thing, but an imitation of the real thing. We just like in the soul, ultimately it wants to be happy, right? That's a supreme position of the soul. It wants to be joyful, it wants to be happy. That is how the soul is in spiritual world. And when the same soul comes to material world, it still wants to be happy. But since we have this desire to enjoy separate, independent from the Lord, then what happens is we try to look for enjoyment in material things around us. And hence it is a reflection, but it's a perverted reflection of the spiritual existence, right? It's almost the same, but still it's the opposite of what the spiritual world is. So it's an imitation of the real thing. In the reflection, the roots you can see are on the top. If you look at the image, a reflection of the tree, the roots are on top, the leaves and branches are downward. Just like how we explain material, Brahma is on top. Brahma is a root of the material creation. So the Brahma is on top and all the planets are downward in the material world. So similarly, like the reflection, the roots are top and all the branches are downwards. So Brahma is a root of the material world, which includes all the higher planets, Earth, lower planets, different types of jivas. So they all live in each of these planets, and but since these are material planets, they are entangled in various types of material activities, which is further trapping them in the material world. Now, if you look at a banyan tree, it's very widely spread. Even if you see around temples and all that, some old banyan trees are very widely spread, and there's like roots and some rope like things hanging out around all around the trees, right? The roots are coming from everywhere, not just from the root, it's from branches also. You can see some roots hanging out. So it's little difficult when you look at a banyan tree to know where it's starting, where it is ending, right? Similarly, our involvement in this material world is so deep that it's very difficult to say what exactly starts our material existence and when it's going to end, because we are so engrossed in this whole process, right? So this other thing this verse is saying is the leaves are the Vedic hymns, right? Vedic hymns, why? Because these are the various material activities we do to please the lords, the demigods. Okay, all whatever Veda says, we do this homa, this yagna, we do things to please the demigods. And because of that activities, we keep getting trapped in the material existence over and over again, right? So when we're doing all these karmic activities for our sense enjoyment, we get trapped in this inverted banyan tree. And that's how you understand this verse. There's a small analogy given in this regard. So it said that there was a queen once. Okay, she's not the Queen of England for sure. It's just a random picture. So there's a queen, and she had a very beautiful diamond necklace. Okay, so once she was in her palace, the windows were open. She was enjoying the sun. She had removed her necklace and kept it away in near one of the mirrors. Now suddenly a monkey comes there and it snatches the diamond ring and goes off from there. Now, the queen liked this diamond necklace very much, so she told the king to go find this diamond necklace. Anyone who finds this necklace will be given a nice reward. So a message is spread out throughout the kingdom, and everyone is searching for this diamond necklace. Okay, and it so happened that three friends, they were sitting by the bank of the river, and in the water, under the water, they see this diamond necklace. Okay, so the first one tries to jump in and grab hold of the diamond necklace, but as soon as he jumps into the water, touches the water, the necklace has disappeared. So he comes back. Second one tries again. They see in the water there's a diamond necklace. Second one tries. When he fails, as soon as they jump into the water, the diamond necklace has disappeared. Now all three fail like this. Now finally, a sadhu who's watching this whole situation from far away, he sees this situation and is inquiring, what happened, what are you trying to do? So he says, we are seeing this diamond necklace in the water, but we're not able to catch it. So the sadhu points out to the tree and says, the diamond necklace is hanging on the tree, you're seeing the reflection alone. So you'll have to, if you like to, enjoy the reward of getting the diamond necklace, you'll have to actually go up on the tree and not down in the reflection. So the moral of the story, in other words, is we try to find happiness or a peace of mind at a place or with things which themselves are temporary, right? How can something that is temporary give us permanent happiness? So how can something that is in the material world, where the material world itself is temporary, how can anything in this material world give us permanent happiness? Right? We think some things gives us happiness, but it's not permanent. Right? We think that things in the material world will make us happy somewhere, family, good job, good salary, me have a time with family, extended family, happy talks about others. We think all these things makes us happy, but eventually, when we try to be happy this way, what happens is uh, we end up being sad, because this whatever happiness we are saying, if you're spending too much thinking about all these material things, then eventually, you'll forget about the ultimate goal of being a human. We'll forget about, what is more important than just trying to do these short term things to be happy, right? So uh, we simply look for we are simply looking at the reflection, and we are making big plans for permanent happiness. But since the material existence is short and impermanent, all our efforts to stay happy is therefore ultimately getting wasted, right? So uh, a warning, or so in the sense of this analogy, is we need to be very careful about, because we think we have some 80 years to live on this earth, and this 80 years will somehow manage to crack the deal, we'll go back to Goloka. But it's not easy. All of us have already, most of us may have already crossed midlife, or more than midlife for that matter. Some are still young, but we never know when death is going to come, right? Whatever the age is. So we should be prepared for the ultimate truth, which is death. And we should be thinking of how should we crack this long term exam of going back to Krishna, or remembering Krishna at death. And our life should be lived in that way, right? So let's read the next verse, 8 and 9.
मैं माताजी
Yes, Sumit Prabhu.
श्रीभगवानुवाच शरीरं शरीरं यदवाप्नोति यच्चापि उत्क्रामतीश्वर बृहन्तैत्मनि संयाति वायुर्गन्धान्निवाशयात् श्रोत्रं चक्षुस्पर्शनं च रसनं घ्राणमेव च आदिष्टाय मनश्चाय विषाय नूपसेवते. Translation: the living entity in the material world carries his different conception of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus, he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Just like the aroma of the flowers, it mixes with air, and the aroma is carried from one place to the other. Similarly, we are carrying this, our different conceptions of life, different forms of life, from one body to the other, uh, eh, because of our subtle body. This we discussed yesterday, right? From mind, from our desires, from what we are asking for in this life and desiring, we are getting carried to one form of body to the another. So Lord continues to give more knowledge in this verse. This chapter is called Purushottama Yoga. So these verses are explaining the Purushottama Yoga, or what's the process to connect with the Supreme. or understand how his energies are spread all over the universe. So Paramatma knows what our desires are, right? Paramatma is always inside us. He knows what our desires are, and he sanctions us a body based on our desires. So these desires are carried from one body to another through the mind, which is part of our subtle body. So when we leave this body, along with the soul, the subtle body, which is your subtle body, is your mind, intelligence, and ego, false ego. This is also transferred, right? And along with the mind, our past desires also get transferred. Your mind is a subtle, it's not like your brain gets transferred. Your desires, your thoughts within your mind is getting transferred, right? And based on our past desires, we get a new body. So this way we are carrying different conceptions of life from one body to another, or the soul is getting migrated from one body to another, right? So when you are in the body, you're bound by the kind of body you're living in, right? So here it says that the living body, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eyes, tongue, nose, sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. So depending on what your desire is, you get that kind of body, and accordingly you'll get different types of sense. Like for example, if you have a body of an elephant, right, then your happiness will be, maybe having sugar cane, or just taking bath, and after bath you put sand on yourself. The elephant is taking happiness with that kind of activity, right? Or if it's a dog, um, it is happy by eating food on the ground. If you put a plate of food on the ground, it's happy just eating the food from the ground. You can't put a plate of food on the ground in front of a human and say, now eat it with your mouth, right? So the dog has different kinds of senses. The humans have different kind of senses. The dog will not look for lavish houses. It is just happy sitting in a corner anywhere. But as humans, we want houses, we have desires, and to meet these desires, then we'll have to start working, right? So this is how, in addition to having desires, animals might have desires, but they don't have to work hard for it. But as humans, we have desires, and we ultimately end up working. And if this pattern goes on for too long, if we get addicted to the mode of sleeping, eating, mating, defending, then we also end up um, uh, just living like animals in other way, right? So if for example, to further elaborate on it, so our conception of happiness and sadness changes based on the body we have. Like for eagle, it can see things from a very distance, so their eyes are different. But a human being cannot look like that from a distance, right? And maybe the ears of a dog are very sharp. It can hear the remotest sound from a very distance. So our body reacts differently to a different kind of body. So if you have a body of an eagle, then then you can see from distance. If you have a body of a bear, you can sleep, hibernate for months, right? So our what we call as enjoyment changes depending on what is the kind of body we have. So this can be further explained with a small pastime. So this so happened that Indra is the king of heaven. He was given he was cursed by Narada once to become a pig for some offense that he did. So he was cursed to be a pig now. So Indra came down, and he became a pig, and he started living on earth that way. So eventually uh, he found a female pig, and they made many babies. And they had a big group of pigs always roaming together. They were happily rolling in mud, pleasure, and that was pleasure for them. And as time passed and the duration of his curse was getting over, now all the devatas can see that Indra, he has no plan of coming back. He's enjoying the pig life, and he has no plans of coming back. So they are waiting for him. Then finally Narada says, I cursed him, so let me go and bring him back. right? And when Narada reaches and tells him, you're Indra yourself in your past life, so why are you here trying to enjoy? Why don't you come back to heavenly planets now? Your curse is over. You should know that you're the king of the gods, and you should come back to heavenly planets. There's so much food, so much enjoyment here, and here you're trying to live here enjoying this dirt and mud. Why don't you come back? So this pig or Indra says, I'm very happy here with my friends and my family. I don't want to go anywhere. What is, heavenly planets? I don't want. I can't leave my piglets and come and all that. So I want to live here. Now Narada is in shock listening to the god of Devatas talk like this, right? He said he realized that because though he's the god of Devatas, he's in Sattva Guna, because he is born in this material world with a certain body, his sense of happiness has changed. Now the only way to change his whole cycle is to take him out from this pig body. And this is when Narada finishes his life as a pig over there, and he goes back to Indra, and then he remembers, yes, I what was I doing? I was enjoying that versus enjoying my heavenly pleasures over here. So this way, even a person, even Indra, who's in Sattva Guna, in his next life, in his material, he does not remember what you might in this life say, okay, if I continue my Krishna consciousness just like I've started now, then maybe there's a hope for me in next life or next life. But imagine if even a person like Indra, who is a demigod, higher living being than us, he doesn't remember what happened in his past life, right? So what is the guarantee that you and I will remember that this resolution we have right now, that we should live this Krishna conscious life? We might just forget it. It took us almost so many years, half our life is done, and now we are trying to connect to Krishna, right? uh, Something like that could happen. It's like calling it is called as chewing the chewed, right? Something that we have vomited, we are trying to chew it again. So trying to come back, relive this whole material life and hope that, next life this will be better than this, is that process, is a process of chewing the chewed. So instead of doing all that, it's better that we stop trying to find happiness in this material world and look for permanent solutions rather than temporary happiness in this material world. Okay, so this is how different bodies makes us feel that our happiness is different. So let's read verse 12 and 13.
Ma'am, Mataji, if anyone is not.
It's okay, I'll read this if nobody's. Yad aditya gatam tejo jagad bhashyate kilam yak chandramasi chak chagnau tat tejo vidhi mamakam gam avishya cha bhutani dharayami aham ojasa pushnami chaushadhi sarva samo bhutva rasatmaka. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of the whole world, comes from me, and the splendor of the moon, the splendor of the fire, are also from me. I enter into each planet, and by my energy, they stay in orbit. I become the moon, and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. So Krishna is further explaining his Purushottama Yoga here. So Krishna is saying he's a maintainer of the whole world. How? He's saying here Krishna is showing how without Krishna, we cannot even have any kind of sense enjoyment. Okay, so we are thinking that we are enjoying on our own, but if Krishna had not provided for us for all these things that we are enjoying, we can't even enjoy, right? So we can develop this Krishna consciousness even while we are in this material world by appreciating Krishna as the maintainer of the world. So these verses are showing the material world is sustained by Krishna and thus establishes us in knowledge. Now, this verse 12 and 13, Krishna is our maintainer, is the maintainer of the whole cosmic universe. He's the source of light of the sun, moon, fire, right? So we heard before in one of the chapters that sun receives this its light from Krishna. From Krishna's effulgent body, the sun is receiving its light, and from sun, moon, stars, fires, everything else gets its brightness. So this way, Krishna is a reason why the darkness is getting dissipated from this material world. Then he says he's entering into each planet. and maintaining every living being within. How are the planets which are so heavy, it's without any turbulence, it's constantly rotating in its orbit? How is that happening? It's happening because Krishna is maintaining these planets in its orbit. And as the moon, he says he is giving the juice of life to all the plants and vegetables. Every night when the moon is up, the fruits get his nourishment. So all the sattva, all the nourishment that we receive from the fruits and vegetables, that's coming from the moon. So ultimately, Krishna is the cause why the vegetables get their nourishment. So further in this verse 14, aham vaishvanaro bhutva praninam deham ashrita
अस्थितः
prana.
प्राणापानसमायुक्तः पाचमी अन्नं चतुर्विधम्.
Okay, aham vaishvanaro bhutva praninam deham ashrita pranapana samayuktaha pachami annam chaturvidham. Sunita Mataji, please read the translation.
I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the four kinds of food stuff. Hare Krishna Mata.
Yes, Hare Krishna. Krishna is maintaining every individual, right? That was confirmed in the previous verse. Now he's saying further how he is maintaining them. He's saying he's the fire of digestion in the stomach, also called as Jataragni, right? So every jiva, whichever jiva has a different kind of stomach, and there's different kinds of Jataragni within them. It could be a small one like a bird, has a small stomach, so the Jataragni will be a little lesser. And then somebody like Bhima, he had so much voracious eater that his Agni, Jataragni, is much higher than a regular person. So depending on the kind of body, your Jataragni is also Krishna, right? And he's saying this Agni is digesting the food we eat. There are four kinds of food that we eat: something that we chew like rice, right? Something that we sip like juices, lick like your chutneys or achar, pickles, something that we suck like mangoes. So there are four kinds of food, chaturvidham. And Krishna, he enters our prana vayu, and with which prana vayu is a type of air. There are 5 types of air within our body, and one of them is prana vayu. So this prana vayu keeps going inward, outward, and Krishna is digesting all this different food with the air within the body. So this is why um, we don't really eat. Many of you might have heard, don't eat ice creams after food, right? Most of us are adults, and children also. We shouldn't be eating ice creams after food, because when you eat something extremely cold, right when your Jataragni is at the highest point, it's supposed to digest your food. Eating cold food means you're putting off that fire. So your digestion is going to be impacted. So this way, Krishna is saying he's not just giving us the sun, light. He's not just nourishing the food, he's also digesting the food for us, within us. So let's read this further.
Hare Krishna Mataji, yeah.
Komala Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Bhagavad Gita 15.15. Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto matta smritirjnanamapoharam cha vedaischa sarvairahamiva vedyo vedanta kritveda videva chaham. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas.
Vedas.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Krishna. So as Paramatma seated in everyone's heart, he's saying, I am the reason why they remember, they forget, and they have knowledge. Now you might be very if you look outside, you might see some bird nests hanging outside your window. So how does a tiny bird get that knowledge, that get these twigs, put them in this fashion, and then a strong, robust nest can be created? Or how does an ant get the knowledge that combine these kind of soils, and a ant nest hive is created? So how does all these creatures get their knowledge. It's from Krishna. Or remembrance. Remembrance, we are reading so much Shastras, we are reading so much, getting so much knowledge. But who is giving us the remembrance to remember all this? That's coming from Krishna. Also forgetfulness. Now forgetfulness in fact is a blessing for human being. Imagine if you have lived through so many life, and we remember every single thing that has happened in every single life, right? In some lifetimes we might have had a very gory death, or we might have gone through really bad things in our life, and if we still remember all that, we'll be in so much pain just thinking about all those past things. Even if it's not past life, even current life, it's so sometimes we'll feel that eventually as time progresses we forget something that happened in the past. So we can look at it as a blessing of Krishna, that we're able to forget things, and that forgetfulness is also coming from Krishna, right? Forgetfulness of Krishna also, that fact that we are forgetting Krishna and enjoying our material life is also coming from Krishna. That is a different topic, because that's coming from our material existence and the kind of life that we want to live. So he's further saying that the reason why he wrote the Vedas, as Veda Vyasa, he's the compiler of all the Vedas, and the reason why he wrote all the Vedas is so that we remember him, get to know him, right? And he says he's a knower of all the Vedas. The essence of the word Veda is me, and you can read all Vedas and come to the same conclusion, that, or by reading you can come to the same conclusion that you come by reading Bhagavad Gita. This again goes back to a Gita Mahatmya. So you can either read the Vedas, and the Vedas also tell you that ultimately all these sacrifices you do is for the Supreme Lord, right? Or you can read Bhagavad Gita and also get the same conclusion. So Krishna himself is a compiler of all these Vedas, and as Veda Vyasa, and the intent of him to compile all this is to know him better. Let's read verse 19.
May I,
Hare Krishna,
Mataji?
Mataji, can I try?
Yes.
Hare Krishna. Bhagavad Gita 15.19. Yo mam evam sammudho janati purushottamam sa sarva vidbhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata. Translation by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Prabhupada ki jai. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, or son of Bharata. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, this verse is pretty much concluding this verse to say, whatever we know, whoever knows the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubt is the knower of everything, right? But before we get to that point, there's a small pastime. Srila Prabhupada quotes this pastime many times. It's called the Kakatala pastime, a story of a crow and a fruit called thala, right? So there was a tree, a palm tree, and many people in this village were sitting under a palm tree, and they're having debates. What kind of debates? They were saying they're having debates with each other to say, how does this world universe come into existence? Who created? Who came first? What is this? So they're arguing with each other, and each one had their own concocted version of how the universe came, how living beings come, who comes first and who comes. So they all creating all these concocted versions of their and arguing with each other. They are scholarly people, and they had all different ideas of who is God, who is the creator, and there was an argument going on. Now on the same tree there was a crow. Suddenly the crow flies, and the tal fruit, the fruit from a palm tree, falls down, right? And looking at the crow fly and the fruit fall down, the scholars, they now started focusing on the coincidence, or what are the chances that something like that, the crow flew and the fruit also fell. It all happened together, and what a coincidence it is. Other scholars said, no, it was not a coincidence. The crow stepped on the fruit, and hence the fruit fell down. the third scholar said, no, the fruit was falling down anyway. And because the fruit was falling, because of the sound, the crow flew. Okay, so again, they're debating this story, and hence this is called as a kakatala, because the kaka is the crow and tala is the fruit. Now there was a scholar nearby, and he was listening to all this argument. He was visiting Vrindavan, and he was on the way to Vrindavan. He happened to overhear all these debates between the scholars, and what he said, okay, I heard all your arguments so far, and I have an obvious answer to all these problems that you're dealing with, right? So he said he picked up this fruit that was fallen, he washed it nicely, he offered it to Krishna, and he distributed all this fruit to all the scholars and said the only solution to all these problems, because anyway, some way or the other, you have come into this material existence, right? How you came, who was a creator, all that does not matter now. What matters then is that you decide on how you want to go back to Krishna. That should be what you should be discussing, not all this, made up stories on, all these assumptions on how things happen, what is the sequence, who is a creator. All this discussion now makes no sense, right? Rather, we should, now that we are here by some way or the other, we are here now in the material world. So instead of focusing on the past, let's look at how can we go back to Krishna, right? That should be our focus. And with that, the story very nicely summarized, as human beings, what should be our focus in our life. It's better to discuss Krishna instead of discussing some concocted stories that is made up from our brains that we come up with. Instead of debating all these things which have no conclusive answers, it's better that we focus on the Supreme Lord and at least make sure you have a conclusive answer on what is happening ahead of us. We have control on what is ahead of us versus what has happened in the past. So this way we must engage ourselves fully in serving Krishna. And Krishna also confirms this in this verse. He's saying, one who knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything, right? All we need to know as human beings is we need to know Krishna, and he therefore engages himself in full devotional service to him. And once we know that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, we have no option but to serve him, right? We are constantly serving somebody or the other in this material world. It's either our families, our pets, your bosses. By default, you're serving. But that is because the nature of the serve is to surrender, is to serve. And if you're not surrendered to the Lord, you're surrendered to someone else. You're serving someone else. So instead, it's better we surrender to someone ultimate or supreme than everybody. And at least the result of the surrender will be such that we will get uh, 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 Supreme Personality of God. He recognizes us and says, okay, this is my devotee, and I take control of his life. Right? So that's how we should surrender to the Lord. Now, this is the last verse of chapter 15.
May I, Mataji?
Sunita Mataji.
Iti guhyatamam sastram idam uktam maya naga itat buddhva buddhiman syat kritya krityascha bharata. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. Hare
Yes.
Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna. And so in summary, Krishna is saying, has given the most confidential knowledge of Paramatma, how the whole Purushottama Yoga is managing everything. So as Paramatma is managing everything, every jiva within, and is explaining in this chapter how he's managing everything, how is everything sustained and maintained by him. So whoever understands this knowledge and realizes perfection in all their endeavor. Okay. Smarthavya satatam Vishnor Vishmartavyo na jatuchit sarve vidi nishedha syur etayor eva kinkara. This is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. One should always remember Vishnu, never forget Vishnu, Krishna, and all injunctions and prohibitions are based upon these two principles. So the only two things we need to remember in our human life is to always remember Krishna, never forget. Just like our very dear Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, just summarizing Srila Prabhupada's journey. Um, so he is one of these acharyas we know for sure. He lived his life remembering Krishna, serving Krishna, and he never forgot Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada, he was born as Charan De. Abhay Charan De. He was born to his parents, whose names are Gaur Mohan De and Rajni De. He was around 1896 that he was born. So when he was born, his family that he was born in, they are very pious people. His father was also very pious, mother was also very pious. So he's very naturally was born in a pious people. Like Srila Prabhupada said, if you read the purport where he says people who after long practice of spiritual life, if they fail, then they're born in transcendental families. And in that purport, Srila Prabhupada says, my humble self also was born in such one of those transcendental families. So very early in his life, Srila Prabhupada watched his father do devotional service, and he was learning very nicely from his parents on how to offer prasadam, how to worship Jagannath. It's said that at the age of 5, he conducted the first Rath Yatra. Because he wanted to do this Rath Yatra, his father bought him an old cart. He purchased a old cart for him. And this old cart, they somehow fixed it, and they set up Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra Mai, and all the small children around the same age, 5 and around. They pulled this cart and took it around the neighborhood. And imagine that this process of pulling the cart of Jagannath, which started when he was 5 years old, every year they would do the same thing, pull cart, distribute prasadam. Every year he did the Jagannath Rath Yatra, and this continued when he was later as well, when he was old. He has set up, even at the age of 77, by the age of 77, he had set up so many Rath Yatras in so many different countries. Right. So this motivation from him for having the Rath Yatra started when he was 5 years old. So very early in his life, at around 22, he got married to his wife, Radharani Devi, and they had about three sons and one daughter. And he finished his degree in the Scottish Church College, and that's why you can understand why Prabhupada's English is so apt. It's a British English. Sometimes when you read his English, there are words that you may not have even heard in general conversation. If you think so about his English, his Guru Acharya, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, if you have read the translation from Brahma Samhita, that English is something you can't even phantom. You won't even understand. Though you're trying to read it, you won't understand that English. It's that intense. So Srila Prabhupada is studied in British English, but however, as he was finishing his degree, he got very interested in Gandhi's civil disobedience movement. He was part of the freedom struggle. So Abhay Charan, he joined the freedom struggle during that time. So in his youth, he was attracted to Gandhi, and he was trying very hard to follow the principles of Gandhiji. So later on, as he was going through the freedom struggle, the unrest during that time, that's the time he met his guru, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So it just so happened that one of his friend, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was very famous in this time because he was a very eloquent speaker. And he was such an intense debater that nobody could speak philosophy in front of him. So nobody could oppose him. So he was become very famous. So his friend introduced him and said, okay, this person, he's very famous, you should listen to him. So he took Abhay Charan with him to listen to Bhakti Siddhanta. And in that first speech, the talk that he heard from Bhakti Siddhanta, Srila Prabhupada had already surrendered and wanted to accept him as a guru. Later, the first instruction Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave him in the first interaction is he understood that Abhay Charan was good with his spoken English. He said, you should speak to the English speaking crowd in the Western countries. So with that, he started his effort to preach in English. In 1944, he started his very first book. He started publishing a booklet called Back to Godhead. He was about 48 at this point. And in 1954, he had already accepted Vanaprastha. So he had given up on his wife, children, and he was actively trying to preach Krishna consciousness. And later in 1959, he accepted sannyasa. So when he accepted sannyasa, he was about 63 years old. So later in the around 1959, when he was 69 years old, he traveled in a ship called Jaladuta to US. He reached Boston and deboarded the boat in New York later. And after 35 days of travel with just an umbrella and 40 rupees in his pocket, he deboarded, reached New York. And from there, by this time, he had already translated about 3 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. With that, he started selling some books. He started making some money. And eventually, what we have today is ISKCON is spread almost in every single country across the world. Right? Srila Prabhupada has traveled the world 14 times to preach Krishna consciousness, to set up temples. So he's traveled the whole world 14 times in that 11 years that he lived in the last 11 years. So he's almost initiated more than 10,000 disciples in his living time. And just in that 11 years of his life, he set up 108 temples. Right? And he published 147 books, including Srimad Bhagavatam, the whole canto, the whole series, Chaitanya Charitamrita. So you can imagine he used to sleep for just 2 hours in the night. And the rest of the night, he'll sit and write. He'll sit and write, translate. He'll be dictating in his microphone all the verses and the translation so that somebody will listen to that dictation next day and they'll start typing and getting the book publishing going on. So Srila Prabhupada would do that every night, sleep for 2 hours, and the rest of the night he will start translating the verses, recording it, and then he'll go attend the Mangalarati, and then that was his schedule. So this is Srila Prabhupada. He dedicated his life to knowing Krishna, spreading Krishna consciousness. He lived in Krishna consciousness. So, which is why he becomes a very inspirational guru for all of us. So anything that we preach today is from Srila Prabhupada's book. The knowledge that we have today is from what Srila Prabhupada has written in his books. So with that, we again offer our very humble obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Okay? Jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you. Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so we are at the end of chapter 15. So a reminder, anyone who wants to be eligible to get a certificate on the end of Gita Gyan level 1, they should have attended at least 14 classes and participated in at least 14 quizzes. So a reminder, if you have missed quizzes and you want to still get the certificate, go back to the quiz link that was shared for that day and participate in those quizzes. Okay, or if you have missed any of the classes, you can go to the recording, listen to the recording, and participate in that quiz as well. Okay, few reminders. So tomorrow is Vaimi Ekadashi. Okay, so I think the invites were shared yesterday or today. There will be a special class on Ekadashi and Varaha Dvadashi at 7 p.m. tomorrow IST. So please be available for that class. Please attend those classes. And those who are willing, those who are already doing Ekadashi, continue that. And for the rest, if you want to try Ekadashi, put a note to me and I'll tell you the process of what you can eat, what you don't want to eat, or if you already attend last time's class, that should have already been discussed at that point. So that was one thing. So another thing is we'll finish this course, 18-day course on Wednesday next week, right? So Wednesday, the date will be, what's the date on Wednesday?
12th.
It's 12th. So on the 15th, that is next Saturday, there will be a Sammelan program for everyone who participated in the Gita Gyan program. Okay, whoever has participated and is in Bangalore, the certificates will be, the hard copy of the certificate will be given to you in the temple premises of ISKCON Sheshadripuram. The details of the Sammelan, the timings will be shared. But before we give further information, I just on chat, if each of you could mention which place do you come from? Are you from Bangalore, some other place, outside India, within India? Can you mention on chat which location, state you come from? Okay, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad. Okay, Dubai, West Bengal, Belgavi, okay, Nagarabavi, Bengaluru. So I see many people are from Bangalore, some are from Hyderabad. So there will be a Sammelan happening simultaneously in Bangalore and Hyderabad. Okay, for people who cannot come physically, we will either send you the hard copy over mail or send the soft copy over email. We'll decide on that. Okay, so decide depending on how Sri Hari Prabhu decides on. Ultimately, we'll ask you for your email address or your physical mailing address, whichever works for you. Okay, the rest who are in Bangalore, you are invited to come to the temple on the 15th of February. Timings and all other details will be shared then. Have darshan of Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadramai, and with your blessings, you can accept your certificates for completing Gita Gyan level 1 as well. Okay, Jai, do you have any questions on anything discussed today? No questions? Okay, so tomorrow is Saturday. Saturday, Sunday, we don't have a class. Our next class is on Monday, 7 p.m. It's a very interesting topic. It goes back to the 3 modes, and the chapter 16 is talking about the divine and demonic nature. What are the different behavior of people in divine versus demoniac nature, and how do you how does ultimately what's the fate of each nature? So we will understand that topic further on Monday. I request for your participation in the Ekadashi class tomorrow, and have a good Ekadashi. We'll meet again on Monday.
Hare Krishna
Thank you,
Mataji.
Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Thank you,
Dandavat
Mataji.
pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna
Krishna.
Mataji.
Hare
Dandavat
Krishna.
pranam.
Dandavat
Pranam.
pranam.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat pranam.
Thank you,
Dandavat
Mataji.
pranam.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare
Pranam,
Krishna
Dandavat
Mataji.
pranam
Thank
to
you, Mataji.
everybody.
Danda Pranam
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna
Dandavat
Mataji.
pranam.
Dandavat pranam.
Hare Krishna to all.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat pranam.
Vaishnavyo namo namaha.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Dandavat pranam.
Dandavat pranam. I'm closing the call for everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat pranam.